Hi guys, welcome to the session. I hope you can hear me. And there's some problem uh, in my video on OBS happening on my machine, so my video is not working. But I guess we can continue with the audio here and the screen share. I just want to check whether you are able to see me, see my screen or not. So today we are looking at an aggressive strategy for DILR. How do you maximize your data interpretation and logical reasoning returns in a 9-month framework? So that's the idea of the session: data interpretation, logical reasoning in a 9-month framework. So as you know, the first thing you need to understand is why is DILR crucial. One full section. You do very well in quants, you do very well in verbal, but if you don't do well at DILR, you are you kind of lost it in terms of your CAT performance. So data interpretation and logical reasoning becomes very critical in terms of your strategy. So and the first thing when you talk about strategy or aggressive strategy, defensive strategy, whatever you talk about, when you're talking about an aggressive strategy for DILR, you have to look at being able to do maybe around, inside the exam, there are two possibilities for CAT. One possibility in CAT is it's a 2-hour exam this year, and the other possibility is that it's a 3-hour exam. Now, probabilities, which one it is going to be likely, etc., depends on COVID situation and other things which are outside our control. Hi, Shoaib, welcome to the session. And those things are outside our control, so we should not try to control them. So when you're preparing, a lot of people are asking me this question कि क्या करना चाहिए, कि 2 घंटे के लिए तैयारी करना चाहिए, कि 3 घंटे का करना चाहिए, what should we do? So I tell people that don't bother. I mean, you should be ready for all those, both 2-hour and 3-hour exams. Preparation wise ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. It's just the test taking which will differ. Because देखो CAT preparation में there are two parts to it. One part to CAT preparation is skill development, getting your skills in place, and the other part to CAT preparation is your performance management. So skill development में कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ने वाला है whether it's a 1-hour exam or a 40-minute exam. So while you are developing your skills, you don't need to bother about this part at least. Right? When you go for performance and you go for developing your performance and your thinking and your ability to perform in the exam, then it might make a difference कि how do you take a 40-minute exam versus how do you take a 1-hour exam. उस केस में उस पर difference आएगा. Otherwise, it won't make an iota of difference whether it's a 2-hour exam or a 3-hour exam. You don't bother about it. So in case it's a 2-hour exam, the way the paper was structured this year, the questions were 4, 4, 4, 6 and 6. That is how 24 questions across 5 sets. 5 sets, 24 questions. Right? In case it's a 3-hour exam, 1 hour per section, then the paper structure, the current structure which is being used, which has been used over the last few years, has been 8 sets of 4 questions each. Right? And when you're talking about the ability to solve data interpretation, logical reasoning, of course, to start with, you have to keep your DI preparation and LR preparation, at least for the first 3 to 5 months. You have to keep them separate. But a lot of times nowadays, one of the things that is happening is you realize that a lot of the times these days, one of the things which is happening very commonly is that when you are solving the paper inside the exam, ये पता नहीं चलता है कि DI solve कर रहे हो कि LR solve कर रहे हो. More or less दोनों चीज़ एक ही तरह लगते हैं. Lot of times you might be solving a LR set, लग रहा है कि DI है, logical DI set है. You're solving a DI set and you feel it's more a logical quantitative LR. So it's a very thin line. But at the same time, when you're starting off, you have to keep the two separate from each other. Your LR preparation has to be kept separate from your DI preparation. And I'm talking about LRDI because this is the session is a 9-month aggressive strategy for LRDI preparation. Right, that's what the session is all about. Right, so coming back, तो ये दूसरा एंगल होगा. तो एग्रेसिव का मतलब दो तरह से एग्रेसिव हो सकते हो तुम. एक एग्रेशन तुम हो सकते हो कि कितने दिन में तुम पोर्शन कंप्लीट करना चाहते हो. हाउ इन हाउ मच टाइम डू यू वांट टू बी रेडी for the CAT. That is one way in which you can be aggressive. And the second way in which you can be aggressive is what are you trying to achieve in the exam. So typically what happens is इस साल तो मतलब the kind of paper that was there in the second and third slot, वैसे पेपर में तुम अगर even if you can score 6 to 8 questions, even if you can attempt 6 to 8 questions in a paper like that, you are close to 99 percentile in such a situation. But normally you would not expect कि वैसा ही पेपर हर टाइम आएगा. So Lokesh is asking, is 1 year enough for CAT or what do you think about it? Yeah, so typically skills wise 1 year is sufficient because 6 to 8 months is sufficient to get your skills done. Of course, I'm assuming that you are a decent learner and you're able to move on your learning journey. लेकिन कहीं पे अगर तुम्हारा learning process stuck हो गया और तुमको थोड़ा ज़्यादा time चाहिए, तो sometimes it's been seen कि you might require to do a little bit more. But LRDI के लिए I think 6 to 8 months is sufficient. Because LRDI में क्या होता है ना कि after a certain time things start becoming repetitive. सब कुछ repetition होने लगता है. After a certain time frame things start becoming repetitive और सब कुछ repetitive अगर होने लगता है तो you're not doing anything new in a new question. So LR में और DI में cycle क्या होगा? It's basically a cycle of experience in both LR and DI. And typically you have to look at your DLR prep in two phases. Three phases rather. One is I'll just come to your question, Sujit. Give me a couple of minutes. So 3 phases में LRDI preparation करना है. One phase is where you are only working exclusively on the basics. This is the skill phase. And the second phase is your skill plus performance, where you're working on basics and also on performance. That means you start your mock tests. And the third phase is where you're exclusively only on mocks. ठीक है ना? So if you look at the timeline, I would suggest that अभी तुम start कर रहे हो, starting now. We are in February, towards the last week of February now, and in that context, we are in the last week of February. We have let's say a June timeline, June end timeline to get the first phase through. Then June to August, September. In that you are spending 50% of your time on mocks, or maybe, I mean, during this time you are taking one mock per week. So in the time phase where you're doing one mock per week, in that time, matlab you are spending around 20-25% of your time on mocks and 80% on your time on skill first still. So you can continue doing your basic skill work during this time also. Last May, when you last September to November, when you move to three mocks per week, three even four mocks per week, so then in that time you are basically doing the during this time you're basically then going forward to your mostly mocks. 80% of your time is mocks and 20% is in skills. So before I go ahead with this part, Sujit is asking me, I'm commerce background, not good in quants. How can get I am scholar? So you will have to get good at quants because not only uh, quants skills are required in QA part, but DI part also requires a lot of quant skills. So you'll have to get better at quants. Without getting better at quants, you can't really this thing. So make a plan where you are ready to. I mean, see what happens is every time you study a chapter in quants, you'll get better at it. So if you really want to get through, you really want to get through, you really want to get through. So what you should do is focus on being on doing stuff multiple times. एक बार करो, दो बार करो, तीन बार करो, सेम चैप्टर को चार बार रिविजिट करो. As you keep revisiting, you will keep getting better at it. That's the whole idea, right? So you do that and you might your first journey, first part of it might be कि you are at a 30, 40, 50 percentile और तुम उसको 30, 40, 50 से 60, 70 ले जाते हो. एंड सेकेंड पार्ट फिर सेकेंड टाइम जब करोगे तो 60 से 80 ले जाओगे. एवरी चैप्टर में बी रेडी टू डू 4 राउंड्स 5 राउंड्स. और टिपिकली क्या होता है कि फर्स्ट राउंड जब करोगे तो ड्यूरिंग योर फर्स्ट राउंड योर टाइम रिक्वायर्ड, सपोज अ चैप्टर रिक्वायर्स in your first round you are doing 20 hours. The second round in the chapter might require you 10, just visiting the chapter just for 10 hours. And the third time it might just be a 5-hour visit or a 3-hour visit. So that way you can keep doing your stuff. So Mehak, yes, you can ask your question. I'll be happy to answer your question also. So let's come back to what I want you to organize yourself preparation wise. So I would basically then essentially what you need to understand, as I've told you, data interpretation and logical reasoning both are experiential subjects. You learn both of them through experience. ठीक है. So you need to get to, in DI you need to split your work into two parts: traditional DI and logical DI. And in DI, unlike quants में क्या होता है, the flow chart is you watch a lecture of a teacher and then you go into the problems and or the theory. Once your theory is done, after that you go into the questions of solving, etc., problem solving experiences. In data interpretation, in data interpretation does not work that way. In DI, what you do is you straight away jump into problem solving. You straight away jump into problem solving, and you start experiencing it, and along with that you start doing your questions, etc., your classes, etc. Because in a class in DI, you will not have. Thanks for that, Sujit. Meg, you have some question you can ask. So Rohan is asking, according to you, what is the ideal pathway to follow prep? That's what I'm talking about DILR today. Quants पे सेशन में लिया था last week, तो उसको देख लेना. So Itishri is from humanities background, not started my prep for CAT, not joined any coaching this thing. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you for DILR today. और बाद में मैं if I've got time towards the end, so it's a 1 hour session, so I'll have some time towards the end, so we'll start working on that part also. मतलब I'll tell you about the other parts also of preparation. So as I said, what you should do is you should start solving day one, week one, when you're preparing. You can pick up my DI book or you can pick up any other resource and start solving 15 sets per week, because we want you to reach a point of around 300 sets of experience. We want you to reach a point of around 300 sets of experience. उतना एक्सपीरियंस पहुंचोगे उसके बाद ही तुम्हारा मेजरमेंट हम लोग स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं कि तुम कैसे और क्या करना है तुमको. बट बिना 200-300 सेट किए हुए तुमको तो समझ में नहीं आएगा कि डीआई होता क्या है. एंड योर टारगेट शुड बी अराउंड 100 to 150 सेट्स इन ट्रेडिशनल and 150 to 200 sets in logical DI. And what happens in data interpretation when you are solving your first 20 sets of traditional DI, first 25 sets of traditional DI, you will start, every set will be new experience for you. There will be newness in the experience when you're solving the sets. But when you solve the next 50 sets, you'll start seeing after the first 25 sets, the next 50 sets that you solve in traditional DI, you'll see that there's a sameness to what you're doing. They're more or less asking the same question again and again. So to get to the depth, I mean, a safe number of sets in DI, when I talk about a set, I'm talking about a 4 or 5 question set of questions there. ठीक है, that's what is a set. तो 150 सेट्स कंप्लीट करोगे उसके बाद ही तुम्हारा मतलब you would have experienced similarity or sameness in almost every aspect. So what do I mean by sameness? तो sameness किस तरह का होता है DI में? DI में sameness जो होता है या similarity या repeated experiences जो होते हैं, उनमें से सीखना पड़ता है कि अच्छा लास्ट टाइम ये फेस किया था मैंने, तो इस टाइम जब फेस कर रहा हूँ तो मैं आई एम बेटर एट इट बिकॉज आई फेस्ड इट लास्ट टाइम. सो ये रिपीटेड एक्सपीरियंसेस को तुम एक्सपीरियंस करो. एंड आई थिंक इफ यू डू 150 सेट्स ऑन ट्रेडिशनल DI, it should, I mean, you will stop getting new stuff in while solving traditional DI. You will start seeing that basically the same thing is again and again repeating itself. तो DI में जब जाते हो तो इसमें एज अ साइड क्या क्या रिपीट करता है, एंड दिस इज बोथ फॉर ट्रेडिशनल लॉजिकल. What repeats? So there are 6-7 things that repeat. One thing that repeats is data structure. I'll come to what I mean by all this. The second thing that repeats is data representation. The third thing that repeats is data structures. Let's call this data structures and equations between variables. The third thing that repeats is language of the question. That's the third thing that repeats. Mehak, DILR is data interpretation and logical reasoning. It's one of the 3 sections. There. ठीक है.